Hi, this is Mr. Evans. This video is going to look at the two sorts of business growth that you need to know, listed in the specification as organic and external growth, and you need to know the advantages and disadvantages of each. So I'm going to look particularly at organic growth in this video. But to understand organic growth, it does help to understand what external growth is. So I'll briefly just talk about this. Organic growth occurs when a business basically controls its own growth. Okay, we looked in a previous video about how growth can mean lots of things. It could mean increasing the number of sales, it could mean increasing the number of branches, it could mean increasing the number of employees. Whatever expanding a business or business growth means, organic growth occurs when that business is funding in control of its own growth. So, for example, a method of organic growth is reinvesting profits into the business. You can also sell shares of your business. You could get a bank loan to do organic growth. But the point is that the growth is being controlled, directed by a business. It's those businesses managers who are saying, right, this business is going quite well. Let's develop ourselves so that we get bigger. They might open new stores, they might develop a website, they might do outsourcing or franchising, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the point of organic growth is that the organization has control over it themselves. They're doing it themselves under their own brand. Or a business could choose to grow externally. Well, what does that mean? It means that a business takes over another company through either a merger, which is an agreed takeover, or a takeover, which is one that isn't agreed. To be honest, takeovers aren't very common these days. Examples of mergers would be like Jaguar Land Rover, previously two separate companies, Jaguar and Land Rover. I believe it was Land Rover who took over Jaguar. But the point is that these companies have merged, they're now one. Now, what does that mean in terms of growth? It means when Land Rover took control of Jaguar, when they merged with Jaguar, Land Rover got their brands, they got their customers. You're basically buying another organisation's sales and growing through that. You acquire their factories, their employees, etc. So it's a very quick way of growing. So I'll talk more about external growth in the next video, but for now, let's focus more on organic growth. So organic growth occurs when an organisation increases their sales through expanding the scope of their internal operations. In other words, doing these things which I've already talked about. Outsourcing is when you contract a third party to complete part of the production process. So, for example, Land Rover may contract a third party to produce their brakes, for example. Maybe that they want to grow very quickly, and for some reason they've decided that the best way to do that, they're going to stop wasting time making brakes in the factory. They're going to outsource part of the production process to a third party, and the brakes will be delivered to them, all constructed, and they just need to go on the vehicle rather than constructing them themselves. Maybe that's a way of growth. Or maybe a t-shirt manufacturer will receive a very big order that they can't fulfill with their current factory, and they'll ask a third party to produce the t-shirts under their brand name, but they'll license that third party to do it. It's a way of growing, but it's organic. You retain control, you retain your brand name by doing so, and the sales come through you. Franchising is when you license the rights to start a business under a recognised brand name in return for a fee. So McDonald's, Subway, these are all examples of organisations that have grown through franchising. If someone wants to start a burger company, they could start Mr. Evans Burgers, or they could start McDonald's. Now, which one am I more likely to do? Well, it would depend on a range of factors. But if I'm happy enough to use the McDonald's brand and be told what I'm going to sell, then I might choose franchising. And that's a way of retaining control of your growth to a certain extent, because you're licensing people to do it for you, but you're not overtaking any other businesses. These people are coming to you, offering you a fee so that they can trade under your brand name. So what are the advantages of doing this? Well, it tends to be more controlled than external growth, because you're able to do things like maintain the organization's culture, what makes that organization unique. You can retain your management style, your brand image, your USP. You know, when Land Rover overtook Jaguar, they were buying their employees, they were buying any problems that Jaguar got, they were buying them, they were buying the management team at Jaguar. If they did things in different ways, you know, they were going to have to deal with that as a problem. But when you grow organically, you're not dealing with any of that. You put the management structures in place that you want. You retain your brand image and your unique selling point. You're not kind of confusing customers by maybe two separate organisations. I mean, look at Asda and Sainsbury's, which are looking to merge at the moment. This is potentially way less risky than external growth, because the problem with external growth is when you buy a company, you are also buying their problems and the issues that they have, and maybe the reason for the merger or the takeover is one of the companies isn't doing terribly well, and you know, you might not find out exactly why that is until you take over. And organic growth might be associated with higher worker morale than external growth. You know, how do those employees at Jaguar feel if they're taken over by Land Rover and they start being told different ways of working or different ways of doing things, or maybe they don't agree with that? You know, Jaguar have got a different profile to Land Rover. They sell to different customers. Maybe they don't want to be told what to do. Whereas organic growth, you know, these are people who are working for the same company. They're being employed by the same company, and perhaps they like the fact that they're growing under their own brand name. That company culture remains the same. Well, what are the disadvantages? It can be slower than external growth. Obviously, if I'm growing my own business, if I want a car company, I can buy Jaguar. I buy their production facilities, I buy their workers, I buy their brand, I effectively buy their customers as well. Those people who want to buy a Jaguar, suddenly, if I've got the brand, they're coming to me. I'm buying their sales. So organic growth is a lot slower than external growth because I need to build my factories, build my new shops or whatever, and it's far slower. And in a fast-growing market, well, I'm going to, you know, if it takes me a long time to open my new branches, well, maybe I'll miss out on potential sales as a result of that. So external growth tends to be a lot slower. Organic growth is controlled, external growth tends to be a lot quicker. Organic growth is slower but more controlled. So when would it be appropriate? Well, if the business has a very strong, unique selling point and brand image, well, organic growth might be better because you're not going to be tainting your brand image with another company's. If the business has a very unique culture that might not work elsewhere. So when I'm talking about culture, I'm talking about the way things are done within the business. You know, how management and employees talk to each other, the systems that they have in place. If the business has a very unique culture, way of doing things, and they suddenly merge with another company that's got a different way of doing things, that can cause conflict. In a slow-moving market where there's not huge opportunities to take care of, maybe organic growth is better because it's more controlled and less risky. And finally, the government often don't like mergers and acquisitions, particularly with something like Sainsbury's and Asda, because you create a huge company, and that can be bad for consumers. Okay, if Asda and Sainsbury's aren't competing with each other anymore, maybe they can start to raise prices a little bit. The government don't like that because it's bad for consumers. So that's the pros and cons of organic growth.